Good evening. Welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I am GERHARD MATHANGANI, joined by our expert researcher / historian, Mark Everett Kelly, in the house, as always, here on Wednesdays. We'll get into some stuff with USFL. Obviously, a large influence here in the state of Alabama. We'll also talk a little bit of NFL, and we'll have some high school basketball scores to pass along from the regional round. But first, Mark, let's start in college basketball. The Alabama Crimson Tide played yesterday. It's not necessarily a must-win game. I think a lot of people agree that they're in the NCAA tournament. They can improve their seeding, though. Took another step towards that in a smaller way yesterday against Vanderbilt. What did you see from the Crimson Tide, or what are some of the things that you like about this team as we end the regular season?
One of the reasons why they're in is because of all of their key quad one wins, and you add quad two, they have 13 in quad one and quad two. That's why they're headed to the NCAA tournament. And against Vanderbilt, you're talking about a team that was kind of on its last legs, fighting for its life. They came out, they played great defensively. They held Alabama. They were winning 37-28 with about a minute and a half left to go in the first half. And then all of a sudden, Alabama got their legs under them a little bit. You saw Quinerly coming off the bench for Nate Oates. Some thought it was a punishment. Really wasn't. He kind of wanted to get more instant offense off the bench with Quinerly. You saw in the second half scoring 17 of his 19 points. And his run there, when Vanderbilt cut it to 55-53, Quinerly hit a 3 and 2 layups, kind of to extend it to Alabama's biggest lead. Now, down the stretch, Alabama missed 8 of their last 9 field goals. That's something they're really not doing well. Same thing with Auburn. Have a problem executing toward the end of the game. They did shoot 22 for 25 from the free throw line, which was a big reason why they won the game. But also, Vanderbilt got to the line 36 times, making 27 free throws. Scottie Pippen Jr., they did a great job on him in the second half. He scored his first points of the second half with 3:10 left in the game from the free throw line. And if he could have made one of his to another free throw with 46 seconds left, would have tied the game. And then you have, Jordan for Vanderbilt, Jordan Wright, missing that layup, basically uncontested. That would have put the game into overtime. So Alabama got a little bit lucky. How that guy got that shot off at that point in the game is something that is uncharacteristic of Alabama. But also their previous game against Kentucky, they allowed Kentucky to shoot 9-14 from three-point range. Allowed them to shoot 56% from the field, 53% from the field. Something Alabama usually doesn't do. So they came off that game, they held Vanderbilt to 35%, much better. But again, 36 free throws. They got to do a better job at using a little bit better defensively and not creating so many fouls, because they only went to the free throw line 25 times. Normally, they shoot 72%. They shot 88% last night. So that kind of saved them last night. That's not going to happen every game. So they were kind of lucky to win this game, but they did. So they kind of saved themselves a little bit, saved the embarrassment of losing to Vanderbilt, a team they really should beat, and Jerry Stackhouse, who had won like 3 or 4 at home. But again, they don't really beat good teams, because all of their losses, their 3 out of 4 losses overall, were to top 25 teams. That's what Alabama is. So Alabama was able to save face for a little bit against Vanderbilt and put themselves in much better position these last couple games. Heading into the SEC tournament, they got about 3-4 games left, and that'll be, if they can get a top 4 seed like we had kind of discussed. They're 8-7 right now in the league. Definitely in great position to be in the overall NCAA tournament. So I think it'll really help them if they can get a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament.
Exactly. They have a chance to do just that. You talked about some of the defensive things. That's one of the things Coach Nate Oates really harped on late. And then you see Alabama getting it done, giving up 72 points. They were allowing about 75 points, played out to their average defensively there. Let's take a look at those SEC standings. You mentioned it just a moment ago. Bama now 8-7. They can get themselves, as you said, they can work themselves into one of the first 4 seeds, which of course plays really well in the NCAA and the SEC tournament, because you get a nice little bye there. But one of the things I think with this Alabama team, I think they're starting to ascend when they need to play well. Now, the backside, every now and again, some of their defensive things have been concerning. Their defensive measures have been concerning. However, they've now they put themselves behind the 8 ball at the beginning of the SEC slate, but now they've put themselves in position here late to kind of control their own destiny.
Yeah, I think, and that's what you want to see toward the end of the year. Quinerly being able to come off the bench has kind of maybe helped them a little bit. Like you said, when I played in high school, I liked coming off the bench. You're able to kind of feel the game and then put your your mark on the game, no
Right.
pun intended. And I think for Quinn Lee, I think that works a little better for him. But they need Davidson to step up and be a consistent third scorer.
Right.
If that happens, then I think they're going to be a real threat. If not, I don't know if Quinn Lee and Shackelford can handle the amount of offense that they need to handle. They're too inconsistent shooting
Right.
the ball.
Right.
Because Alabama, you look at 80 points per game, which is great, but they're only shooting 44%.
Right.
And they're only shooting 30% from three-point range.
Right.
Not good enough.
Exactly. I think I think so too. I think they need that third guy, that third scorer to really help put them over the top. Meanwhile, Alabama's remaining schedule looks like this. They got 3 games left on the slate coming up on Saturday against South Carolina. It's a home game. Texas A&M, it's another home game before going to LSU. It's a situation for Alabama. There are no guaranteed wins.
No.
There are no guaranteed, like Kentucky, like a game that you expect them to lose, not of Auburn, not of Kentucky, not of Arkansas. These are 3 very winnable games to put themselves over the 20-win mark and then get themselves, like you said, in the top 4 position.
Take Texas A&M. They played Auburn very tight.
Right.
Okay, in one of the ugliest games ever.
Right.
Okay, that could happen at Alabama. What happens if Alabama shoots 30% in the first half against them, or doesn't get for the free throw line? I mean, a lot of bad things can happen against teams you expect to win. South Carolina's tough. 7-7 in the SEC. You still got to beat some good teams.
Right.
Whether they're borderline. I mean, they might not be beating the Kentuckys and the Auburns, but they're still beating. 7-7 isn't bad. They're only one worse than Alabama. Texas A&M, again, they're so tough defensively, and they will make you play ugly.
Right.
And Alabama ordinarily doesn't really play nice basketball that makes you see, wow, this is a team that really knows how to pass the ball and all that.
Yeah.
So they kind of win ugly to begin with. That could be a rough game for them. I'm looking forward to the LSU game because these 2 teams are not like each other. Heading into the SEC tournament, this is really going to be, I think, one of the better matchups in the SEC, and I think that's going to be seeding.
And I don't think the SEC did that on accident.
Yeah,
either. After
exactly.
Everything that happened last year, I think they knew there was going to be some drama going into this matchup. They put that as the CBS game coming up a week from Saturday. Meanwhile, on the other side of it, Auburn playing tonight, however, looking to bounce back after that loss against Florida. This is a Tiger basketball team that I think they're operating on a different level. Everybody else in the SEC, outside of maybe Kentucky, is operating to give themselves a good standing. I think a Sweet 16 in the Elite 8 would be phenomenal for just about every other team. I think Auburn's chasing something different. They're chasing a national championship and just trying to put themselves, make sure they stay on the one line. They can do so with a strong finish. But one of the things where I think that the slate in and of itself, we'll take a look at it later, the slate is somewhat tough, but I think this is an Auburn team that's really focused that can, if they want to, they can really win these next 3 games and get themselves in a position to have a good showing in the SEC tournament before going over to the NCAAs.
Okay, now against Florida, this is a team that Florida, they are on a bubble. This would have been a big win for them if they get it. How they got it was they held Auburn to 21 points in the first half. Auburn's only shot 33% from the field, and here's the other thing. No free throw attempts in the first half.
Right.
Second half, they get a little bit better. They wind up shooting 20 free throws attempts, make 17 of them. But down the stretch again, after shooting 47% in the second half, down the stretch, they seem to not know where to go with the ball. And you saw in that last possession, much like the game against Arkansas, they got away from their strength.
Right.
Only 9 assists in this game. The last 2 losses on the road, 9 assists in both here and at Arkansas. That's why they lost. Look at this. Kind of chaos, don't know what to do, try to get it to Kessler underneath. Kessler was outplayed by Florida center, who's really not afraid of him. And between Appleby and Castleton, who was Florida center, they made 14 free throws between the 2 of them. The rest of the team only made 5 field goal attempts.
Right.
Okay, Appleby played out of his mind, some big 3-pointers. Florida really overall wasn't good enough to win this game. Those 2 guys played really well. Castleton wasn't afraid of Kessler, kind of stuck right into him, played Kessler even, if not better, and that's strange for Kessler because he's really dominated other centers in the SEC overall. Jabari Smith, 28 points, shots like this.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you see though?
NBA shots.
I mean, that is pure talent. But what do you see? Auburn standing around.
Yeah.
They got a little too comfortable watching him play. 28 points, but only 12 and 11 for their second and third scores. 2 for 10 for Wendell Green. Not good enough. when Auburn wins, they penetrate, they set picks at the top of the key, they use pick and roll, stuff like that. They didn't do that enough, which is why they only scored 62 points.
Exactly, and I think you made mention when it came to Alabama that they needed a kind of another score. I think Auburn needs a little bit of the same thing, but like you talked about, that ball movement really needs to go as well.
And Wendell Green is that guy. If he's taking good shots and if he's penetrating, kind of opens up everything.
Yes, it certainly does, and Auburn's offense gets really dynamic after that. Meanwhile, head coach Bruce Pearl did speak about that. Talked about a little bit about this offense and the way that he wants his team to see rolling here towards the end.
You know, typically those are pretty good days because, you know, you're trying to get that taste out of your mouth. And so I thought our guys practiced really well yesterday. We got a lot of good things done. You know, our guys, they want to win a championship, and they know they got 4 games left in the regular season, and we got 4 tough games, and so they practiced, they competed, they're communicating with each other.
All right, so Coach talked about the 4 games coming up. He said, called them 4 tough games. I think he's just being nice, giving the coach speak about Ole Miss. They should win that game. That game is tonight. Meanwhile, a really tough game at Tennessee. Mississippi State's not a gimme. Just like Alabama, they're games that are winnable. However, there are no guarantees.
Road games at Tennessee and Mississippi State, I would say they might lose both those games.
Wow.
Mississippi State is a very good team. They've kind of fallen off a little bit late, but they play very good defense.
Yep.
About a couple weeks ago, they were like one of the teams in the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying that it's definitely going to be a loss, but those are 2 really tough games coming up. Now, Ole Miss, first time they played them at Ole Miss was winning most of the game.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, down the stretch, they just couldn't make plays. So Ole Miss is a little bit tougher than they seem. 4-10, no, they haven't overall been able to play consistent enough and execute down the stretch of games. That's why they have the record they do. And again, at home against South Carolina, another team that, like we said for Alabama, South Carolina can beat anybody.
Right.
They haven't beaten a good team yet. You know that they're going to have that marked on their calendar. So if they falter a little bit against Tennessee and Mississippi, it could cost them a little bit as far as seeding in the SEC tournament. Isn't really going to cost them big overall, because whether they're a 2 or 3 or a 4 even, I don't really think it's going to matter, because they're still good enough to win in the NCAA tournament. They've played some tough teams in the SEC, had some tough losses, road losses against good teams that are probably being, I don't know about Florida, only 2 wins, only 2 quad 1 wins. I don't know overall if they're good enough to get it. Somebody said beating Auburn was their ticket in. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I think Auburn right there with you. I think they can. The lowest they could drop if they lose every game, and then one and done in the SEC tournament, maybe the 4 line. But I think the 3 line. I agree with you. Nothing easy there for the Auburn Tigers. We'll of course keep an eye on that. Coming up next here on Overtime, we're a football heavy topic coming up next. Both the National Football League and the U.S. Football League making a big splash to Alabama. That comes your way next.